Welcome to the 10 Years Out podcast, stories from my queer community. I'm your host, Sam, and it is my 10 years out. Yay! My pronouns are she, her. I identify as queer. And is there anything else I need to say? I am really excited about all the strawberries that I have harvested from my garden in the last 2 weeks. It's been a bounty. That's a side note. Here with me today is the one and only John-Allison Weiss.
Hey, happy to be
Yay!
here on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm so excited to actually get to talk to you. I've been following your music for years, and I saw you play in Austin years ago. Um, and
Nice. I love Austin, one of my favorite cities.
yep, yep. So I'm really glad that you wanted to come on and talk about your coming out and what you've learned since coming out, because sure, it's going to be a gem of a story.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is like for me so tied into my music career, and I'm
Yep.
sure we'll get into that too.
Okay, so to start off, what are your pronouns? How do you identify? And how long have you been out?
My pronouns are they, them. I identify as queer and trans-masc. And I've been out as queer since my early 20s, and I've been out as trans just for like 5 or 6 years now.
Awesome.
Um, there's kind of like 10 years in between, which
Yep.
is, a big part of my story in general, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Part one coming out and then learning a lot of stuff, and then part two coming out.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay. So, what do we need to know about your story pre coming out?
Well, I guess like when you put it like that, yeah, like part one coming out and part two coming out,
Yeah.
I'm sort of like, I think a big part of my story and figuring out who I am is just that um, maybe the coming outs will continue like over the course of my life because like uh it's been 10, 15 years now since I've been like sort of like documenting my life through having a music career in the world of social media. And because of that, I feel like I have to like come out anytime there's anything sort of
Mm,
like new about me.
mm-hmm.
So the first time being in my early 20s, like coming out as gay, and at that time I identified as a queer woman, and I was just announcing that this is who I love and this is like what my songs are about. And I feel like it was a time too in um the timeline of like queer liberation and whatnot that was like before gay marriage was legalized. And like
Mm-hmm.
really I had like entered the music industry with this sort of idea like being openly gay was going to be like a big choice and like the only thing anybody ever talked about. And like it was like a lot more rare to find a queer artist in the mainstream. And now in the year 2023, like there are so many queer artists. There are just like hundreds if not thousands of like cool queer bands making music on Spotify and like
Mm-hmm.
showing their stuff on online. And yeah, so it's just been, I forget what my train of thought was going down that line, but a lot has changed basically,
Yeah, for real.
myself included. Like over that 10 years I sort of like accepted my own transness, and then through like the visibility of other people online like sharing their stories, I was comfortable enough to to share my own, to I like to say to like embrace true authenticity in my life. And like also that means my art as well, my
Yep.
music and my sharing of all that through social media.
Yep. Yeah, music has come a long way in the last 10 years, or the visibility in music has come a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like a conscious choice. I started playing music, as a straight girl, and I feel like pretty quickly people were like, "Are you sure about that?" Especially like considering who all my friends were and who I was hanging out with, and yeah. So then it became a thing where I had to like actually come out, and that was the day and age of like It Gets Better campaign. So I
Mm,
came out in an It Gets Better video. And I honestly should do an update because I think
yeah.
that video is still on YouTube and it's extremely outdated now. Um,
So do you
But
want to talk any about how you grew up? Any sort of that backstory do we need to know?
yeah, I mean, I guess like I sort of have like a pretty like traditional queer background, I think, in that I grew up in a environment where it wasn't really accepted. It was like I wasn't in like an overly hateful environment necessarily, but I grew up in the South, and I grew up in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, I feel like queerness was like, I considered it to be like really like fringe culture and like,
Mm,
oh, like, uh, it just like so separated from like me and my little like suburban Southern world.
yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like a big part of like accepting myself and like all that jazz is just like realizing that like it's not that fringe of a culture. Like I love to learn queer history cuz I love to like see how many like decades and decades there have just been like so many queer people like living their lives, having a blast, loving whoever, doing whatever. It just wasn't in my small town and people weren't talking about it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember when I moved from Arkansas to Austin, and the first time that I ever like met and hung out with a gay person, an openly gay person, I was like, whoa. And then the first time I hung out with a gay Christian person and how they had reconciled their faith, which at that point I wasn't even, that's a whole other story. But
Yeah.
I remember going from that little small town in Arkansas to big city Austin and like, oh, gay people really exist.
Yeah, right. And it's like not only do they exist, but like they can be extremely nuanced, and it's not like all cut and dry. Like if you're gonna be queer, you can't be religious,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're gonna be gay, you have to be gay in like one certain way. Yeah, for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was definitely like I think I first started seeing and hanging out with queer people in real life when I moved to Athens, Georgia, from my little town of Flowery Branch. So that was like Athens is like this tiny kind of like Austin vibes. But then after that, I moved to Brooklyn, and that's like, I mean, moving to New York or LA, somewhere like that. I feel like because you're just throwing yourself into a world where you get to see how many different types of people there
Right,
actually are.
exactly.
Yeah,
I remember the first time I went to one of your concerts, I had just come out, but I wasn't even aware that you weren't straight. And so you were at the concert with your then partner, I think. And I remember my like evolution of thought during that concert, like, I think they're not straight. I think they're with a partner. I think they're like me. That's cool.
oh my god, I love that. That's amazing. I want to know like when that was. Do you have any idea what year it was?
I
Also, did I have long hair or short hair?
it was like medium length. It was like
Medium length.
it was like here-ish, shoulder-ish. I think it was
Okay.
2014,
Something
2014-ish.
like that. Amazing. Ugh.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like I can really like define my eras by like how short my hair got because it's definitely like I definitely like made the choice to get like the alternative lifestyle haircut when I moved to Brooklyn and like I my first queer relationship I was with somebody where it was like I sort of kept it a secret like from my online life because I
Mm,
wasn't, talking about being queer or anything. And so I hadn't really like embraced all my weirdo queerness yet.
yeah.
And as soon as we broke up, I was like, I think I need to cut my hair short. I think I need to do all these other things to like feel right in my body. And yeah, so that has like correlated with me having this music career. And like when you are like trying to, be an entertainer or whatnot, you have to take photos and
Yeah.
promote yourself. And so there's like so many pictures on the internet from over the years of like
Right.
what I looked like then, and that's been a whole thing in and of itself to like
Right. Yeah. Your life has
move through
literally been
that.
documented in the public.
Yeah, yeah. Which there's like different sides to look at it because I'm sitting here being like, oh, this is kind of cringy, but then I'm remembering the hopefully queer kids who will see that and then know
Mm-hmm.
that this path is a path that they can choose.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because I feel like that's the whole thing with me too with queerness is it's like the coolest thing about being queer is that there's so many different ways to go,
Mm-hmm.
which is why visibility is so important
Yeah.
to show people that they can be queer in any way that they want to.
Okay, is there anything else we need to know about your backstory before getting into what you've learned since coming out?
No, I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think there's
All
anything
right.
else.
So what have you learned since coming out, either part A or part B?
Since coming out,
Or
definitely
both?
that there's no right way, and you sort of just have to find your own path, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, I think I said something a little earlier where I was talking about like how the coming out might continue.
Yeah.
And so I guess like yeah, what I've learned since coming out is it's not necessarily just like one big moment. Like hopefully you spend your life learning more about yourself and who you are and how you want to relate to other people.
Yeah,
Um
totally.
yeah, so like along those lines just also like it's okay to take your time, you know? Uh like I had a decade between coming out as gay and coming out as trans, and I think I definitely have one of those trans stories where I kind of knew in the back of my mind, but I was really just afraid to embrace it because
Yeah.
of how I had seen trans people portrayed in the media and treated in real life. But yeah, it was once I you know came in came in contact with so many like cool out thriving queer people, whether like online or in real life, that I was like, okay, I think I can do this.
Were you living in Brooklyn when you started realizing or started accepting that you were trans?
uh I was living in Brooklyn when I first started thinking about it, definitely. But it wasn't until I want to say like 2017 or 2018 when I was living in LA that I actually like acknowledged it and came out. But Brooklyn was definitely like where I first started hanging out with like genderqueer punks and like reading feminist books and
Mm,
like meeting people whose pronouns were they them or like
yeah.
zzier, and being like, what's this all about,
Right.
but I was still scared of it. And it took some therapy and some years, but I'm happy to be on the other side.
Yeah, cool. What
Yeah.
books were you reading? Do you have any recommendations?
um well, I feel like back in Brooklyn I started reading the book Gender Outlaw, but I wasn't far enough along in my therapy journey yet to like handle it. It kind of
Okay.
just like sent me into an anxiety spiral.
Gotcha.
And I
Yeah.
just this year actually picked it up again and reread it and finished it, and it's so amazing. And now I really wish that I had, stuck it out and read that book back then. So like
Mhm.
that's a classic for me, Gender Outlaw. Um, uh, are we talking about books back then or books now? Because now I'm thinking
Whichever.
about the books I've been reading lately. I've been reading Lou Sullivan's diaries. I think the book is called We Both Laughed in Pleasure, and he is or was a trans man who I grew up in the like 60s and 70s and was attracted to men and identified as gay, but nobody wanted to let him transition because they were like, well, if you're going to transition, you have to be straight. And
Mm,
he was like, I don't want to be straight, I'm gay. And,
mm-hmm.
so again, on the subject of like being queer the way that you want and you want to be queer and feel queer is so important.
What does that mean for you?
What does that mean for me? I mean, I guess just I feel like the process of like coming out um has also involved a lot of like listening to like what I want and not what I think other people want from me. Um which, applies to my whole life,
Yeah, right.
really. In the past few years I sort of like quit the real world, I say, and moved into my car at first and then a little travel trailer, and now I sort of like live this weirdo road life with a very small footprint, mostly mostly so that I can, just make art and make music as much as possible. Even though I'm like a very underground artist.
Yeah, how's your trailer doing? Because I think your previous one had some issues, and now have you moved on to a different one?
I'm in the process of figuring out what my next trailer situation is going to be. Yeah, because I was crossing the country recently, and I will park overnight in Walmart parking lots a lot. That's like an RV life thing.
Yeah.
You can just park in a Walmart, and stay overnight. And I got hit and run by this
Oh
big old bus. Like,
no.
I was getting ready for bed and this huge bus came by and just like took off the back end of my camper. Luckily, me and my cat were totally fine. But they drove off. So,
What?
yeah, I have sort of been like going through that. It has not been great, but I think that some friends of mine are maybe gonna set up a GoFundMe for me, and I think I will be able to like find a new trailer
I hope
soon.
so.
Especially because the way I live, I don't need much.
Yeah, you need a guitar and your cat
Yeah,
and some food,
yeah, exactly.
maybe some t-shirts.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay. What do you wish people understood?
Big overarching one is just that not everybody has to be the same.
Mm,
You know, um, I feel like that's where so many hangups exist. Is people just like, why can't we just calm down and let people be different?
right.
Um, yeah, so
Yeah, that's a big one.
right, and that's the huge overarching idea. But I guess just like narrowing it down a lot smaller is just like, um, is that like I don't know, you don't have to follow anyone else's like map or path. Um, Something I think that a big part of like the last few years of my life, transitioning, sort of like quitting the real world. I also got divorced, which was really hard, but we are like best friends now, and that's really great. And I think about that period of my life and how before I got divorced, I thought of getting divorced as like, oh, this is the worst thing you can do. You're a failure. And then one day it just sort of hit me like, so many people are divorced. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
is this shame? Where's this coming from? And I feel like yeah, I wish like as individuals we could all understand more that like something that feels like a big crazy change that will like rock your whole world probably isn't, and somebody else has probably done something crazier. So like you can actually go do the thing that you want to do if you want to do it. Like you can you can do it. I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
know.
Or
Yeah.
even if it does rock your world, that it's probably only temporary.
Yeah, and also having your world rocked can like be like something that makes you who you are. So,
Yeah.
you
And give a
know.
lot of good fodder for your songs, I'm sure. Like,
Well, yeah, the
I'm
next
gonna
my
write
next
about
thought on
this.
that was going to say, yeah, and if you're an artist or a creative person or anything like that and all that is just going to, make your art better. Because you're experiencing all these different facets of what life can be. Like you don't have to follow this set path that you were told you have to do. In my case, it was your standard, you know, you go to college, you get a degree, you get a job, you find a partner, you get married, you
Mm-hmm.
have kids, and those kids grow up and then they have kids, and then, you do the nuclear family thing, which is great, and I love everyone I know who's chosen that path, but if it's not for you, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
You just don't.
Yeah, people can get really threatened by differences.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly because they might feel locked into doing something a certain way because it's the accepted norm. So they're threatened or intimidated by anyone who's like outside of that thinking paradigm.
Totally, right? It's like it's always like, do you really disagree with what I'm doing, or are you jealous that
Mm-hmm.
you can't bring yourself to, do it for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're not hurting anybody else, they don't really have a reason to be upset.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always what it comes down to. And it seems so simple when you say
It does.
it.
Let's make bumper stickers. So as a trans man, do you feel safe on your nomadic journeys?
um I feel like I generally, but it's always in the back of my mind. Also, I don't really identify as a trans man.
Okay.
I'm a trans masculine non-binary person, but I guess like but trans man it doesn't feel super right, but it's not wrong either.
Yeah.
And I mean, it kind of reminds me of like out on the road. I feel like I've gained some passing privilege, And so I feel safe in that way because people see me and they're just like, this is a guy, this is a dude. I get a
Cool.
lot of dude, man, bro,
Right.
buddy from men. I found in my experience as a trans-masc person that I learned the secret about men is that they love to call each other cute little nicknames.
That's funny.
Dude, buddy, guy, bro. Hey, boss, man. It's so fun. It's so, and I talk about this with other trans friends too. I'm like, I feel like you can use it to your advantage too, and like you can show a guy that you're a guy by saying hello by being like, hey, bro. It's like only men like call each other these cute little names.
Interesting.
It's great.
That's
But
something
yeah,
you've learned since coming out.
there you go. But yeah, I mean, the safety issue definitely comes into play where like I feel like I would be more social with strangers if I wasn't afraid of them, finding out and asking questions or being weird about it, or worst case scenario, hurting me.
Right.
But I think like my like optimist brain wants to tell me that like most people are going to be chill and it would actually probably be really good for them to meet a random trans person
Yeah.
and have an interaction. Um but yeah, I would be lying if I said it didn't stop me from doing some of the things I would like to do on the road.
Yeah.
Like just go into a random bar and like have a drink in a local town or something. Um but maybe someday I'll get over that.
I bet you will.
I hope so.
So, if you could go back and talk to yourself, what would you say?
Gosh. Um I feel like my immediate response to that is like wouldn't it be nice to just go back and like tell myself all the things that in the back of your mind you think you are, like you are. You can go ahead and start pursuing those now.
Yeah.
Cuz maybe things would be different if I had known really who I was earlier in life and but my life would also be completely different from it is
Right.
now probably. So I think maybe if I don't want to like interfere with the way my life ends up, if we're doing like a real time travel scenario,
Uh-huh.
I would go back and just be like, hey, don't worry, like you're gonna figure shit out. Like you're gonna like what you see
Yeah.
in 10 years. It's going to take you a while, but you're going to make some good art on the way. You're going to meet some amazing people. Um, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, totally. The number of people who have said that as their answer has been astounding.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we all want, really, is just like a little reassurance that like
Exactly.
you're not screwing it up. Everything's going to be chill.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so hard to not have that anxiety about the future, no
Yeah.
matter what age we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when we're younger, it feels like bigger decisions, maybe, that are going to guide our lives. And 30 seems so far away, and then 40 seems even further. And then it's just old. And it's like, what even is life when you're old?
Right? Oh my gosh. I love meeting people that are like a lot older than me now
Yeah.
because it's like as I get older myself, and it's funny, I'm 36, so like a lot of people are much older than me, and they're like, oh, they're like, cool insights, child. But I'm like, wow, I'm getting older, and it's crazy. I'm exactly who I was before. Like it's always been me. I'm not like some old person now. Like I like what you're talking about when 30 felt old. Like I remember being a teenager and like meeting people in their 30s and be like, wow, they're so old. Or like, you
Yeah.
like find out your teacher is like 31 or something. You're like,
Right.
oh my god, my teacher's so old. And then once you hit that age and like go way past it, you're like, wow, the people who were teaching us were children.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's wild to like to learn that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so I'm putting all of my guests on the spot in asking for this.
Okay.
Do you have a quote or a song lyric that you want to send us out on as like a benediction of sorts?
Well, okay, the only thing that's really coming to mind is I've been reading this book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance,
I've heard of
which is
that.
like, yeah, it's very not gay, so sorry if you're looking for queer book recommendations, but it's still amazing. And it's definitely a lot about like breaking like your mind's patterns to like, it's all about this like guy going on this motorcycle trip, right? So there's like really amazing descriptions of them driving this motorcycle down the road and the things they're seeing, and it'll really make you want to travel. But then like it's also interspersed with like all this like really heavy like philosophical thinking. And there's a quote right at the beginning of the book that I like that's like kind of cheesy, but it is, the real cycle that you're working on is a cycle called yourself.
Uh-huh.
And I think the thought behind it is that they're trying to get to this idea that like you're never gonna like reach whatever goals you have unless you have like peace of mind to yourself. And for me that involves, you know, embracing like who you are and like really like being in your body. And so yeah, it's like I guess that quote sort of boils down to just like, yeah, you're thinking about all these other things to fix, but it's really like, it's really about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you so much for coming on, Johnny.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been so fun to talk to you.
It's been great. I can't wait to listen back and hear what we said, because
Yeah.
right now my brain is mush. But I think there's some good stuff in there.
I think so too. Yeah. All right. So, listeners, while you're thinking about working on individual things in your life, think about working on yourself too.
Yeah.
Because you're the only motorcycle that matters.
That's good.
Bye.
Bye.
I go.